And 3, 2, 1. Welcome to The Peaceful Truth, the podcast where we talk about everything from women empowerment, feminism, and everything in between. We're joined by your host, Kenzie. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this week. I hope you guys have been having a wonderful week so far. It is almost Friday for you guys, and this Friday I am going to Austin for the former co-host of this podcast wedding, Megan Hohertz. I am so excited to go to Austin to celebrate her marriage. I'm just pumped for her. I'm also going to be able to see friends and enjoy some warm spring Texas weather, which is basically Washington summer weather. Unfortunately, it's going to be cloudy, which I am very bummed and really depressed about that. But I'm super excited to go back to Texas, and I'm really looking forward to spring. As you can see next to me, if you tuned in on YouTube, I have this huge floral arrangement, and in Washington, spring and summers at the farmers markets, they have these huge bouquets that are much cheaper than they usually would at like a supermarket from the farmers market, and it's really cool and really fun to go grab some. I did that this past weekend. I also saw some cherry blossoms at the University of Washington this past weekend with my family, which was absolute blast, and I high-key recommend going and enjoying the spring weather and the blossoms that are out there. My favorite time, and it also bums me out because I know it's like a very short period of time where there's flowers on trees. I get so pumped about them, but I know it's like only like 2 weeks that they last, maybe less. But yeah, super enjoying that. I wanted to dive right into today's episode. So today's episode is going to be about Joe Biden, actually, and a woman who has come out in talks that are negative about him. Her name is Lucy Flores. And yeah, I just wanted to talk about what's going on there. So Lucy Flores has come out after talks that it's a possibility that Biden will run in 2020. So it's been in the talks, and there's been subtle hints that he could announce his campaign soon. And Lucy Flores, I don't know why I keep saying Lucy instead of Lucy. I understand how to pronounce Lucy, I swear. But Lucy Flores is an American politician from Nevada. She wrote an article for thecut.com, I believe, and this is where all of this negativity stems from about Joe Biden. So she knew Joe Biden and interacted with him, and she has a couple accusations that have come out recently about him. So back in 2014, she was the Democratic nominee for lieutenant governor in Nevada. She said a few days before the election, Vice President Joe Biden, at the time he was the vice president, came out to help her in the campaign, and he attended a rally to boost interest and turnout in her campaign. So what Lucy claims is that he placed his hands on her shoulders, leaned in, smelled her hair, and then kissed the back of her head. What she said was, and this is a quote from the article, "I felt him get closer to me from behind. He leaned in further and inhaled my hair. I was mortified. I thought to myself, I didn't wash my hair today, and the Vice President of the United States is smelling it. And also, what in the actual fuck? Why is the Vice President of the United States smelling my hair?" He proceeded to plant a big, slow kiss on the back of my head. My brain couldn't process what was happening. I was embarrassed. I was shocked. I was confused. The article goes on to say, "By then, as a young Latina in politics, I had gotten used to feeling like an outsider in rooms dominated by white men." There's a lot to unpack here. So this is not sexual assault, and it's not even illegal, but it is inappropriate behavior. This accusation is inappropriate behavior. And I'll go on and go back to this, but this type of behavior overall, I think, should not be accepted in society, but I'm gonna talk more about it. So finally, she wraps up the article by saying, "I'm not suggesting that Biden broke any laws, but the transgressions that society deems minor, or doesn't even see as transgressions, often feel considerable to the person on the receiving end. That imbalance of power and attention is the whole point and the whole problem. Yeah, so I've experienced similar types of behavior with guys that I don't think are bad guys, that I don't think had malintentions, that I never mentioned it, but it did make me feel mildly uncomfortable in my brain. Like if they kissed my head, out of just grabbing me under the arm and kissed my head, hugged me for maybe too long, maybe brushed and put his hand near my thigh. It's nothing explicitly extreme sexual assault. And this rationale of not deeming it as something as even a transgression, or often feel it isn't even considerable, is similar to the boys will be boys rationale of just brushing things off. If you're friends with someone or acquaintances even, and maybe your friendship is on that level to kind of joke around and kid around a little bit more physically, but if it's an acquaintance level or a colleague or a professional setting, it is never appropriate to behave like this, and you would not do this to another dude. So in your mind, if she's your friend or someone that is not a romantic partner and you're thinking, I'm going to put my arm around her or joke around physically with her, just double check in your mind that what you're doing isn't something that you want to do to another dude, is basically what I'm saying. But then Joe Biden did release a statement after these allegations came out. In many years on the campaign trail and in public life, I have offered countless handshakes, hugs, expressions of affection, support, and comfort, and not once, never, did I believe I acted inappropriately. If it's suggested I did so, I will listen respectfully. And that's a statement released by his spokesman on Twitter. So yeah, he isn't necessarily apologizing or saying anything or admitting to it, which I don't even know, if you don't remember that you did something, how can you apologize necessarily for it? I don't know if it's a genuine apology or even that it was malintentioned. You know what I mean? I think it's important to recognize your behavior and say, okay, maybe that makes people uncomfortable. How can I approach the next situation better? So a Washington Post article that's entitled, "Joe Biden's Affectionate Physical Style with Women Comes Under Scrutiny." This is by Elise Vibeck, I believe, Colby Itkowitz, Michael Scherer, and Matt Visor. Whew, those are some complicated names. But in this article, it says supporters describe Biden's physical style, which they say he uses with men and women, which then again, I haven't done a lot of research. Maybe he does do this with dudes. And if he does, then maybe that is his style, but maybe he should consider that makes people feel uncomfortable in certain situations and reevaluate that style. And it's a holdover from a different time. That's, again, the boys will be boys rationale, and you shouldn't fall back on the fact oh, it was a different time. People can understand that things have changed, and people can understand that behavior is now, and society is now changing in their standards. So I feel like people can develop and change their attitude about things. So here's another quote within the article. "He's absolutely been an amazing ally on the policy level and on campus sexual assault," said Terry Poore, policy director of the National Alliance to End Sexual Violence. "But at the same time, nobody gets a pass. Everyone's behavior is up for conversation," which I completely agree with. And I think it's something important for all of us to analyze. So yeah, I think it's an important conversation to have. Like that woman said, it's an important conversation, a discussion to be had, whether this behavior is okay or not, and how we're transforming as a society to make people feel more comfortable, whether we should move forward with being more conscious of our actions physically. With the advent and development of the internet, there is more public shaming when something comes out negative about a human being. Do But I feel like a punishment should match a crime. I don't believe all crimes are equal, or not crimes. This wasn't a crime, but you know what I mean. Negative things that people do are not all equal. Like, to me, murder isn't the same as a white lie. So your punishment should match what you did. And do I feel like this was sexual assault? No. Do I feel like it's mildly inappropriate behavior? Yes. And how should we reflect upon this? Do I think he should be punished permanently for the rest of his life for doing something like this? No. Do I think he should be mindful and consider his behavior moving forward physically around people? Maybe so. Does it make women uncomfortable when you're more affectionate around them? Yes, because women have been trained their whole life on so many different levels, so many different psychological levels of why this touching could be a red flag. One, the touching could be a red flag because the man is coming on to you. It's intimidating. He's a man of power. What is he going to do next? It's just scary of what could happen after that. And your mind has jumped to that because you've been taught that it could escalate to that point and to be wary and to be on guard. Two, it's like shown that like if you are affectionate in that way, like being sexualized as a woman makes you a negative thing or a slut, and they're slut shaming. So there's just a lot of things that I think are in the back of women's minds that makes them uncomfortable, and that's why it's uncomfortable for them. It's also, you should just consider in general that your behavior, how it impacts others, and if you would treat every single person out there in this way. Anyway, I don't think that you should treat women differently or be more affectionate physically with them because they are just a different sex. And that's like your rationale as to why you're doing that. And just because it's traditionally known as the softer one, it just doesn't matter. And people should be conscious of how their actions makes other people feel, no matter how small, even if you're from another generation. But again, I feel like public shaming, it should be a conversation in this case. And there should be some talk, and people should be called out for actions like this. But I think we should also keep in mind public shaming and how it impacts other people's lives and the spiral it could go down, and how it can destroy other people. And actually, John Oliver has a really interesting clip that he just talked about with public shaming that I think is kind of relevant to something like this that I think we should check out. So yeah, what am I looking forward to this week? Obviously, going to Austin for a wedding. That's what I'm looking forward to this week. I want you to think about what you're grateful for or looking forward to, or what makes your week a little bit brighter. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll see you next week. Bye.